Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 9th and tonight's movie is Shutter Island. This is a psychological thriller from 2010 directed by some guy you might have heard of named Martin Scorsese. Leonardo DiCaprio stars as, I think, an investigator or a detective who's investigating something that happened on this island that has a mental facility for the dangerously criminally insane. And while the trailer was pretty big on what exactly goes down, I think it's pretty clear that soon everybody is in grave peril. I looked it up and turns out this is the first ever Martin Scorsese movie I'll ever see. So let's hope that this makes a good first impression. I don't really have anything else to add, so I'm just gonna go watch it. Wow, this movie was an emotional roller coaster, but after getting off, I really liked it. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. This is the best movie so far in this Horror Nights. It doesn't have that extra something to push it into a 10 out of 10, but still, it's brilliantly done. DiCaprio's character is named Ted, and he's a marshal, I believe, with his new partner Chuck, and they're going to Shutter Island, a mental facility, to examine and investigate the disappearance of one of the patients, which in a facility like this is very concerning. Before long, it becomes clear that everybody in this movie has ulterior motives. The people working at the institution have ulterior motives. Ted has ulterior motives for showing up. Everybody has their own agenda. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more clear how shady this place is. Leonardo DiCaprio does a pretty good job in his performance as the main character. But I do have to dock him some points for the fact that he repeatedly pronounced the word escape as escape. This is my first Scorsese movie, so maybe this is uncharacteristic of him, but the impression I got of him from watching this movie is that he is a very aesthetic-driven director. There were a lot of really good shots in this movie that add to the atmosphere, and this film has a classical music type of score to it, and especially at the very beginning in like the scene where they're going from the ferry to the facility, that classical music is just so loud and honestly kind of obnoxious, but it sets up the mood for the rest of the movie. I think the most brilliant part of Shutter Island is the plot, and I really don't want to spoil a lot of it for you. Please just take my word for it. This movie is a trip. It's one of those movies where, like, you start out with one plot, and then, like, gradually it shifts into a completely different plot. And when they say psychological thriller, they mean psychological. This shifts into, like, dementia at a few points. It reminded me of Perfect Blue or Psychosis, the creepypasta, where there's a point where you have no idea how much of what you're watching is real and how much is just in the main character's mind. This movie kept throwing new twists at me until the very end. And, we love to see it, it actually stuck the landing with that ending. So yes, Shutter Island was great. Watch it, it's really good. I would recommend checking it out. Now I want to go into some spoilers. As I already said, as the movie keeps going, this place just seems more and more sketchy. There are records of a patient at this facility who everybody that they talk to says never existed at all. And with the way that the escape of that patient that brought them there, Rachel, the way that it went, it really didn't look like she could have done it without outside help. And her primary care person decided to just go on vacation the day before. Teddy starts falling down this rabbit hole, and this whole conspiracy opens up about this place and what they're really doing. And throughout the movie, he keeps flashing back to two things in particular. First of all, he was in World War II, and he stormed a concentration camp, and that entire ordeal just scarred him. And his dead wife keeps showing up. After more suspicious occurrences, like the missing patient just showing up randomly and being totally fine, Ted finds one of the workers, well, ex-workers, former patients of this place in like a cave. This island is like all rocky around the coast, and just opens up this can of worms of a conspiracy of like pretending that people are crazy so that nobody will pay attention to them saying how horrible it is on Shutter Island. And how now that they got Ted on the island, they're not planning on letting him leave, and how he can't trust anybody, even his own partner. So it planted the seed of that being what's really going on, but as it continues, you just keep seeing more and more things saying, no, he's actually wrong about everything. There isn't a conspiracy. In fact, he's not even a marshal. He's one of the patients. And they keep telling him, it's like, you didn't come here at all with a partner. Who's your partner? And it was like gaslighting and emotional manipulation. And it gets to the point where he like breaks into a lighthouse that was on the island that was like the center of all this sketchy things. And he doesn't find anything suspicious there. He just finds one of the higher ups, and they have this conversation about how he's really one of their patients, and this was all just like a big role play game to try to get him to come to grips with his own insanity. And I realized this, it was like, that kind of puts the audience in the same position as Ted's character, because we as the audience just made the assumption that what we're seeing is what's really happening, because we have no reason to believe otherwise. But as the movie keeps going, and especially in retrospect, Occam's razor makes Ted's idea fall apart pretty quickly. There would have to be so many moving parts, such a convoluted, ridiculous scheme for his version of reality to actually be true. But that doesn't mean it's completely false. There's nothing that would definitively prove it one way or the other, because you can't trust what you're watching anymore. So that makes the big question, is he right or is he insane? And the movie never definitively answers that question. Once again, Occam's razor and rational thinking make the idea of him being crazy seem a lot more likely, but you can never know. And in the last part of the movie, you see him at like the courtyard, and he's talking with who was originally his partner but was actually his primary caregiver. And he has a conversation with him that indicates he still thinks that this is all a conspiracy against him. And they send him to go get lobotomized. But before he leaves, he says something along the lines of, would you rather live as a monster or die as a hero? And that's really fitting for this situation, because if this is all a conspiracy, he died fighting them. But if he really was insane, then he would have had to have killed his wife. So there's sort of the implication there that even if he doesn't completely believe his own, like, delusions anymore, he's gonna pretend that he does in order to avoid facing the reality of his actions. But again, that's basing it on the assumption that he actually is insane and did do all the things they were talking about, and this big conspiracy actually isn't true. This was just brilliantly done on the part of the author of the original novel and the director and the people who made this adaptation happen. I'm not gonna lie, the story that we thought we were going with this super shady, unethical mental institution that's doing like human experimentation to the level of like the Nazis or the Soviets, and like uncovering that would have been a really cool movie too. But instead, we're put into this sort of dementia state where we can never trust what we're watching. Like one by one throughout the movie, our most base assumptions are questioned. This movie was just masterfully executed. I recommend it highly. If you like Martin Scorsese, I know that this is a good movie, so I'd say check it out. Alright, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.